All right, all right. The volume should be up and smoothly running now. Let's see real quick. All right, yeah, there we go. Should be good. I'm just back for another live stream this Wednesday evening here. Um, so yeah, I mean, I did have a couple subject matters that I am going to speak of. Perhaps I might allow somebody to hop on here. If if anybody wants to hop up, just let me know in the live chat, and perhaps I'll drop a link for you. But hell, you know what? Like, here's a good thing to start off with. Like, you know what? I was thinking, you know, I don't mind letting people up to, have discussions and dialogues, but you know what? I'm not gonna continue to let, retards call in. Like, I'll give an example. Like, if Judah wants to keep making fake, channels and pretend that he's somebody else, like, I'll give an example like this B1 free or something like that clown we saw the other day, or Lion of Satan. We don't have time for dumb shit like that. You know what I'm talking about? Like, this is a serious podcast here. We're talking about the word of the Lord, talking about the events happening in the world. Here and there's some room for some humor, of course, but you know, it gets old when people just try to make a damn, joke out of every damn thing. Like, I'll give an example, right? Like, I was watching the discussion that me and what's that clown? What's that dude? Jill, right? Jill. I was watching the debate we had about the Trinity the other week, and it's funny. Jay was there, not Jay. Judah was there, and the dude would like put like little sarcastic statements like, "Oh, y'all are cute when you argue." It's like, what the hell? Like, what the hell does that have to do with the point of what we're talking about, dummy? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not gonna continue to deal with shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, look, I thought that, Judah was a cool guy, and I'm trying to look out for him, telling them, hey man, you need to stop, this Satanism that you're into, and need to stop, worshiping idols and giving, alms to Satan and whatever. You need to cut back on doing that shit, man. If you think that you're gonna, get to heaven just because you're an Israelite, even though you're worshiping the devil, I mean, you are heavily mistaken, or may I say, you are heavenly mistaken. Inside joke. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? So with a lot of these individuals, you give them some correction once or twice, maybe even three times, give them some correction with their error. But, if they still want to, bicker and argue with you, then, for a lot of these individuals, the smart move would to be, then let them be alone, right? Leave them alone, let them, go down their own path. If you give them correction, once, twice, three times, they still don't want to accept it. Well, then who knows? Maybe it just isn't for them. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I've decided, with some of these individuals like Judah, for an example. And again, I don't want to have to, cut ties with that guy because I thought that he was a cool dude. But you know what? I'm not gonna, sit there and try to baby somebody into accepting the truth. It's either you accept it or you don't. I don't really have time to sit there and bicker with dumb people like that. If you want to go and continue to worship the devil, then you go and continue to do that. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to feel sorry for some of these people when they bring this, damnation upon themselves by the dumb shit that they're doing. Hey, as the saying goes, right? You play stupid games, win stupid prizes. So a lot of people out here that are in, effed up situations, whether it be financial situations or, relationship problems or, just all types of shit in general. In a lot of cases, to be fair, it's not all of them, obviously, but in a lot of cases, these people brought these hardships upon themselves by getting into dumb situations. Like, say, for instance, like on Reddit, I see all the time, Guys are posting on the male living space, oh, I got divorced from my wife, and she took the children and left me with, nothing. And he shows a picture of his room. The dude got, a mattress on the floor and, an Xbox and shit. You know what I'm saying? And that's what he was left with. And now he got to pay, child support for however many more years. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, shit, if he would have been smart and thought beforehand, before getting into a relationship, and even if he did want to have a girlfriend or whatever, you don't marry her because once you do that, well, now she's entitled to half of what you own. And, if she wants to, for any reason, she can divorce your ass and leave you on the curb. And you don't have anything you can say about it, put you on child support, take 50% of what you own. Like I said this story before, and I'll say it again. I have a cousin of mine who saved up his entire life to purchase a home. So he got married recently, like I'll say about 4.5 years ago, got married, and they had a divorce, like 2.5 years into their relationship. And it turns out that she got to keep the house and he got the car and, some of his possessions that he had. But the point of the matter is he bought the house for, a couple $100,000 that he saved up. And the woman got to keep the house. He only got his car out of it. And they didn't even have children together. So, it just shows you how bullshit all of this is. You know what I'm saying? So, the smart move for guys today, as I've said before in videos, is to just remain single and, don't marry women. Hey, what you do is up to you. I can't tell you what to do or what not to do, but it's just called being smart, right? Just called being smart, not getting into relationships or serious relationships in the day and age that we live in today. That's just called being smart, which, apparently a lot of people, don't have that type of smarts to them. Hey, Shalom, Shalom. Got Jared Genesis here. How you doing, my friend? Let me see real quick. All for y'all said, yeah, he knows the devil is bad, but chooses to worship him. That's wrong. Yeah, that's a good statement that guy said right there. Um, yeah, like how could like Judah sit there and say, "Oh yeah, well the devil, well he's actually the real God, but he don't believe in the Bible anymore." Then I confound him because I asked him, "Oh, wait a second, so you believe that the devil is real?" Yes, yes. Well, doesn't that mean that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is real too? Then the God of the Bible, if Satan's real? And he was like, "Oh, I guess you're right." You guess I'm right. Well, like, doesn't that change your perspective? That like, why would you believe the devil's like the good guy? And the one that deserves to be respected and honored, and then you say that God shouldn't be. I mean, like what type of double standard and hypocrisy is that? And it's really sad. Like this guy is really deep involved in the shit that he's talking about. You might think that he's just pulling your leg, just trying to get, clicks on his channel, just trying to be funny. But that's not the case. He's actually very serious. You know why I can prove that? Well, for one, he sits there and does videos about it. And two, he also shown on live stream, he showed, well, when me and Jill were in the middle of our conversation, the guy went on camera and he showed us, look at these, like, I think he called them murals that I made in homage to the devil, right? A dude like made like some satanic, like wall mount pieces in homage to the devil. It's like, what the hell? Well, what the hell's going on? So this guy is really serious with saying that he believes in the devil now, right? It's like not even a joke, not even just being funny. He really believes it and is standing behind that. You know what I'm saying? So, we don't really have time for people like that over here. Give them a correction once, twice, maybe 3 times, but if they still want to continue to believe in the dumb shit they believe, well, you know what? Well, you can't really do a whole lot more for people like that. You can't really do a whole lot more for, people in that mind state. You know what I'm saying? If people want to be ignorant, then you just got to let them be ignorant. Like, I'll give you a fantastic example. Like this dummy, what's his cat? I think it's Mark or Mike. His YouTube channel is New Light Studios. A dude for the last 10 months has been saying, oh, well, Joshua had a dream that the rapture would happen. The rapture would happen. Literally every time he gets the prediction wrong, but still to this very day, I kid you not, still to this very day and time, the dude is still going around on YouTube saying, well, the rapture might just be next week. Well, let's look at, August the 12th or August the 7th. It's coming, everybody. Be ready. It's like, what the hell? Like, I mean, then you say that, oh, well, he was questioning Joshua like 6 months ago. But then he flopped on that and decided, well, he still could be right. He still could be right. I mean, come on, I've had literally like 9 hours worth of debate with this individual. Well, to be fair, on multiple subjects, but we definitely covered the rapture subject for like 3 hours, 4 hours of our conversation. And, you can give him all the correction, show them all the verses that prove them wrong, that nobody knows when it'll happen, or the very fact that the Bible says it happens after the tribulation, not before or in the middle. You know what? And they still can't get it. They still want to sit there and argue with you. Oh, it could be, next Sunday, man. It could be next Sunday. Look at all these numbers we put together. Look at all these number calculations we did, so it means the rapture might be next week. I mean, come on, and these dummies are still racking in, tens of thousands of views on their videos each week. I mean, it honestly is unbelievable and is laughable, right? It's honestly unbelievable and laughable. Yeah, but you know what? I bring it up to say, if he wants to continue to believe that dumb shit, I'm not going to waste my time anymore, trying to correct him on that. So I left one comment on his video maybe 3 weeks ago when he was talking about, oh, the World Cup, World Cup. Watch everybody. The rapture might happen on the World Cup. Like, what the hell? And it was funny because when I was looking at his comment board, like literally half of the people in the comment board, half were with him saying, yeah, this really could be it. This really could be it. And then the other half of people criticizing him, saying, well, haven't you guys been saying this since September and nothing's happened? Haven't you guys put like 25 predictions, 50 predictions out already? And it never happens. So there were a few smart people in his comment board that were criticizing what this, numbskull clown, had to say. But you know what? I'm not going to really waste my time with idiots like that. You know what I'm saying? It's honestly just a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? It aggravates us to have to, try to knock some sense into these people's mind. And it's entertaining for them because they can make some content out of it. You know what I'm saying? So for people like that, it just really isn't worth the time anymore to try to, have debates or interactions with. Or a whole nother thing, I'll give you another example. Like I was in a couple Discord servers where people are like, well, let's debate this, let's debate that. And I try to direct them and say, hey, man, well, I go live on YouTube on such and such night. Come hop by the live stream and, I'll bring you up on stage and we can have a discussion about whatever the topic matter is. If they don't want to do that, I don't have 4 hours out of my day to sit there and, text back and forth with people. That gets nobody anywhere. If you disagree about something, just call on a live and have a discussion about it. Or shit, even you guys on Discord, all you got to do is just use the Discord. What is it called? The what is it? The call feature. Somebody can correct me down below what that's called, right? But the panel hangouts where you can call people like on the Discord app and have conversations. Yeah, y'all can do that there. Now, I personally don't do the Discord like call sessions or whatever people call them. Here or there I'll do one or two. Like I went on a call last week with April and some other two people on there too. We talk for like 30 minutes. But, other than that, I really only just, do discussions on YouTube. That's where I do my conversations on. I don't do private calls, very rarely do Discord calls on there. Right. I just prefer doing discussions on YouTube on the StreamYard. You know what I'm saying? It was funny. There was some dummy in the chat the other week. I believe his name was like John James or something like that, and he was trying to get me to come to like some third party website to try to debate him there. He didn't want to use StreamYard for whatever reason, but he wanted to kind of like coax me over to come into some type of other, debate stream panel online or something the website was called. I told the dude, hey, look, man, I told you I'll be live on such and such night. If you want to talk, then you stop by and we'll have a discussion. If you don't want to do that, well, then stop leaving comments. You know what I'm saying? It is just that simple. It is just that simple that, you know, hey, look, I'm right here. Right. That's just the fact of the matter is I'm right here. If people want to talk, you know where to find me. It's not like it's some type of hidden thing that you have to like search deep to find where I'm at. I'm literally right here on YouTube. Well, to be fair, my panel is shadow banned, so it is kind of hard to find my content to some degree or another. But if you got the channel name, well, then you just got to look me up and I'll come up. It's just that simple. Let's see, Priest. Priest said, "Are we debating or what?" Who is that in the comment section, Mr. Priest? I don't know who that is. And if you do want to come up on here, Mr. Priest, I can give you a link, but you got to tell me what subject matter you'd like to discuss. Oh, Enoch. Oh, Enoch. Okay. Yeah, I'll bring you up here, Enoch. Just give me 1 second. All right, so that link in the chat is only for Enoch to come up here. Jared said, Sam, I thought Judah was cool and pretty relatable, and I appreciate the honesty, but he shouldn't be promoting this wicked stuff. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. The dude shouldn't be going around, talking about this dumb shit. You know what I'm saying? And, we're trying to correct the guy, put him on the right path. But you know what? If he doesn't want to acknowledge it, doesn't want to accept it, hey, well, that's his choice. That's his choice at the end of the day. If he wants to go believe that dumb shit, then let him believe it. You know what I'm saying? It's, I hope guys like him, that they have a change of mind at some point. I do hope that for them, that they one day realize that they were wrong and, maybe turn from what they're on there saying. But, I guess you can only hope that. Bear with me a second. Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, shalom.
Yo, how's it going, my friend?
Good. You can hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, good. So yeah, you remember what we was talking about on Discord with
Yeah, on Discord, just to refresh the audience, you were saying something along the lines of that the was it the New Testament's fake, you were saying?
I was saying like right now I'm not reject the New Testament, and I just wanted to see if you know from a Hebrew perspective, instead of the Christianity perspective, how would you substantiate Christ, being the Messiah?
Well, I'll address that in a second, right? The reason I brought up the New Testament is because I saw on Discord you were, like having a discussion on the chat with somebody else about like the New Testament being fake, and then the second topic was about hell in the New Testament. So that's why I brought that up.
Yeah, I remember. Oh, which one you wanted
Okay.
to start with?
Well, I mean, let's talk about the New Testament first. Just so I understand your premise, are you saying that you're unsure of the matter, or are you stating that it's just false and shouldn't be, um, held as authoritative?
If it was true, it's definitely tampered, completely, especially a lot of Paul's letters, definitely. But yeah, I don't see how the New Testament could be inspired at all. I don't think he's the Messiah.
Okay, so because again, I'm hearing this from you for the first time, so I'm just trying to understand. So, are you saying claiming multiple different things that like some of the writings in the New Testament were like tampered with and like added on, and you're also saying that Christ wasn't inspired?
Yeah, yeah, definitely both of those,
So Christ, just so I understand, so you're saying that Christ isn't the Messiah that was prophesied to come, right?
Nah, I'll say
Okay,
it's David.
you said that Messiah is David.
Yeah.
Well, what leads you to that thought?
Um, just the Old Testament. Um, you want me to get the verses? Well, you already know the verses. It says David their king, but y'all replace that with Jesus.
Well, there's multiple people in the Bible called king, like Samuel, right, or King Saul, right? They were called king. You acknowledge that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say makes David separate from King Saul? Were both of them called king?
No, I'm talking about like in the kingdom, let me get the verse. Where when we're in Ezekiel, right, where we're brought back into the land, it says David will be king, this end times, not just randomly,
Yeah, I mean, you
let me
can pull
see.
that up if you want. Well, while you're doing that, let me ask you this: are you familiar with Isaiah, the 53rd chapter?
Oh, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, how do you conclude that this is talking about David? Like for the audience, I'll just read a snippet of it here so they understand. Let me see real quick. Like if I go to Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3 on down, it says, "He is despised, rejected of all men, a man of sorrows, acquitted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet did we esteem him stricken and smitten of God, afflicted. And he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes are we healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord have laid upon him the iniquity of us all." Now, that would be one point I'd show in the Old Testament prophesying about Christ in the New Testament. So I'm just curious, how would you say that David fulfilled that?
I think you're, straw manning me right now. Um,
Well, I'm not straw
Basically,
manning you. I'm just asking you a question.
no, because I don't believe that's David. I don't believe that's a messianic prophecy at all.
So who do you believe that's about?
I believe that's about every prophet. All the prophets suffered.
You said about every prophet?
Yeah, they all suffered.
So just so I'm not mistaken, so you'd say that Jeremiah and and Noah could be considered here, is what you're saying? Because they'd be classified as prophets, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure about. Well, I guess Noah. Yeah.
What,
Yeah, he
Jonah
would fit
too?
that.
Jonah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Jonah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the problem I have with that statement is it keeps referencing he or him. Like, say, for instance, like in verse 4, it says, "Yet did we esteem him stricken of God." Then verse 5 says, "But he was wounded for our transgression, he was bruised for our iniquities." So when I read this, it's talking about a singular person.
I can see why you're saying that. Um, I mean, what I would say is, isn't Israel called the Lord's firstborn son?
Yeah.
Is that about the nation of Israel being called the son, or is that about a
Yeah, it's
specific
talking
person?
about it's talking about the entirety of Israel is what it's referring
Okay.
to.
Yeah, yeah. So I would just say that even though this chapter is being poetic with it, it's really not one person.
Okay. Um so just so I understand, so you don't believe that there's any Messiah that came 2000 years ago. You believe that David was that Messiah when he lived like 3000 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how do you acknowledge like chapters in the Bible talking about the Christ returning a second time to this earth? Do you believe that happened ever, or do you believe that's like a future thing?
What do you mean?
Like, say for instance, like not only the New Testament, but we can find where it talks about it in the Old Testament, like Isaiah the 66th chapter, verse 15 on down, talking about the Lord coming to the earth with his chariots and to bring judgment upon the people, right? Or was it Amos 5:18 talking about the day of the Lord is going to be a day of darkness and gloominess, right? So that's just a handful of precepts that talk about a day when the Christ is sent back to this earth to judge the world. So like, do you not hold
Well,
that view, or what's your fault?
I when I read Isaiah chapter 66, I don't see Jesus Christ, anywhere in there.
Okay, well, who do you think that's talking about?
Well, I could read it real quick, or at least one of the verses, but I would just say it's the Lord, um, and his angels, of course. I wouldn't say that it's Jesus or Yahweh Shah.
Well, does Christ get called Lord?
Well, in the New Testament, yeah.
Okay, so just so I understand, so you reject every book of the New Testament and only accept the Old Testament?
Yeah, only the Old Testament. I don't believe in the Apocrypha either.
Okay. Well, just out of curiosity, what makes you reject the Apocrypha too? Because as far as I'm aware, the Christ and the Jews at the time believed in the Apocrypha. Like, even if you wanted to argue that Christ never lived, it still doesn't dispute the fact that the Jews at the time believed in the Apocrypha during the time that Christ was said to have lived, right?
I think only certain books like Ecclesiasticus, maybe Baruch, everything else was like in Latin. I don't trust the Latin Vulgate, the Catholics and all them. But Sirach and what I said and Baruch, yeah, those are okay. And I would
Yeah, I
only
mean,
read like
I'm
First
sorry, go ahead.
Maccabees. I would only read First and Second Maccabees for history. I wouldn't say those are inspired.
Okay. Well, as somebody who has read the Apocrypha multiple times, what would you say about it that doesn't seem inspired? Because when I read for the Apocrypha, I see many accounts that would seem as it's inspired by the same God of the Old Testament. So, like, what would you point to claim that it's not inspired?
One of the things, well, do you subscribe? Well, what do you think about the Ethiopian canon?
Ethiopian canon, what about it?
Like with the Book of Enoch, the 12 patriarchs, books like those
Yeah,
that are absent.
I don't accept those. I don't accept those particular ones. Because I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
why
Well,
though?
one,
Because well, let me finish real quick. The reason I don't accept certain of those is I believe that there are things talked about in there that contradict the rest of the of the Bible, right? So that's why I reject those particular texts.
Yeah, I understand you. Like for me, like when I looked into the book of Enoch, it seems that Yahushua is quoting the book of Enoch. And one of the problems I have with the book of Enoch is that Yahushua is absent in the prophecies of Enoch, but for some reason, Yahushua quotes Enoch. So I think that's really funny. Um,
Well,
but
what would you say
also,
that he quoted from Enoch? Because I'd argue that Christ quoted the Apocrypha.
let me find the verse real quick. I know first Jude also quoted Enoch. Um,
And don't get me mistaken, I believe that in the past there was perhaps a book of Enoch, but I don't believe that's the one that's on the Barnes and Noble shelf today that you can buy. I believe that's like a 18th century like recreation of it. So perhaps in the past there was some scripture called Enoch, but I don't believe that's the one that's on the bookshelf today. Because again, there's stuff in there
yeah,
that contradicts the Bible, like fallen angels, right, in the Watchers, right? That concept contradicts the rest of the Bible because the Bible teaches that angels or demons are in a subjection under God. They're not in disobedience or rebellion to Him. So that concept alone contradicts the text.
yeah, I would agree with that. Um, I used to hold that position until I seen like the New Testament literally quoting the book of Enoch we have today. Now it's three versions of the book of Enoch: first, second, and third Enoch. I
Do
only
you
believe the
accept the
first
Book of
Enoch.
Jasher?
Nah, I don't accept that.
Oh,
No.
okay. Well, let me ask you a question. Did you know that the Old Testament quotes Jasher?
Um. Well, you talking about in Exodus? I believe it was
Let me see if
Exodus,
I can pull up the. Let me see if I can pull up the chapter real quick for you.
or was it the book of Joshua when the sun stood still?
Yeah, that's what it was. Joshua 10:12, right? He quotes. Paraphrasing for you, but it quotes, "Is this not this written in the book of Jasher?" So would you acknowledge that the Old Testament makes a quote of Jasher?
Yeah, yeah, I agree that. I, the Old Testament is quoting Jasher. I don't think we had the real Jasher today, though.
Yeah,
The full entire.
I'm not in disagreement with you, but the reason I'm bringing this up is it shows just because there's a quote made to a certain book, it doesn't mean it's the one we have today. So like if you say that someone quoted Enoch, I'm not going to argue that, but I would argue that the one at Barnes and Noble is not the one that they're quoting. Just like when they quote Jasher, yeah, they quoted Jasher, but that doesn't mean that the Jasher we have in the 21st century is the same one that they're talking about. Sometimes these things could be forgery over time. But I don't want to go too far off topic. I am really curious about your take on the New Testament compared to the Old Testament because like if you could point out like let's just make it simple and say like two contradictions you'd say that the New Testament teaches in comparison with the Old Testament. What would you point to if you had to point out like two big contradictions between the two of them?
Let me get this verse in. I believe it's the book of Hebrews. Um, so I don't. Which translation would you read? You
I
know.
prefer the King James version.
Okay. So this is Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22. And almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood is no remission. Um, so would you agree that according to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22, it's saying without the shedding of blood is no remission, and I'm adding this on, remission meaning remission of sins, right?
What verse was it you said?
Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22.
Okay, let me check it out real quick. Yeah, so let me see this. Yeah, so I'll just read it for the audience. Let's go to verse 20, as it says, And moreover he sprinkled with the blood of both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry, and almost all things are by the law purged with blood, and without shedding of blood there is no remission. It is therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heaven should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. So I'd read it different from you. It's saying that the blood is required for the remission, because in the Old Testament they used animal sacrifices. They kill the animal and sprinkle the blood upon the altar, and that covers their sins. But now today Christ was sent and his blood was spilled as the forgiveness for sin. So it's saying that the blood was required. So that's why Christ was sent, because his blood had to be shed for us to cover our transgression, just like in the Old Testament, how the animals were, killed and their blood was, spewed upon the altar to cover the transgression and sins. So it's saying the same thing.
Okay, so I think we had I must have read it wrong. But so you're saying that the blood is required, and that's why Christ came.
Yeah, that God required blood as payment. Like, say, for instance, if Christ didn't come to deliver us of our sin, that blood would be upon us, and we'd have to, give in accordance with that. Hell, you'd have people going around if there was, a temple set up like the Old Testament time, you'd still have people going around committing sins and just sacrificing animals to pay for their sins, because some people did that back then. Like people go out, do an act that they believe or know is wrong, and they just pay, whatever shekels needed to kill the animal. Well, now under Christ today, you have to believe on him and you have to live by his law. And if you're just going around claiming to be Christ-like or Christian and not living in accordance with the law, when his blood's not going to cover you. That's, what is that? I'll quote it for the audience, Hebrews 10:26. If we continue to willfully sin after we believe, there remains no more sacrifice for our sins. So that's just a side note on that. So yeah, that's my response for you with that, but you're welcome to elaborate.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I used to hold that belief, but when you go to the Old Testament, for one, when you actually read um, just like when we were sacrificing the Baal, going off in Israel, the Lord eventually, even when we were keeping the Sabbath and the feast, the Lord was continually like angry at us. He wasn't accepting our sacrifices. And so when the temple fell, according to the law, you can only do sin offerings in the temple, right?
Right.
And so basically, after the first temple fell, according to the New Testament, blood is required. So basically, all the prophets that existed after the temple fell weren't covered by the blood or anything like that. They just repented. You know,
Yeah,
and
I understand what you're saying. I understand. Well, I would say that God would understand at those times that there's no temple that exists for people to go out and perform these sacrifices. You get what I'm saying? So the people couldn't
yeah,
go out and commit these animal sacrifices if there's no temple that exists at those time periods. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. So like, I think it even said obedience is better than sacrifice. You know, even in
Well,
Jonah it says,
yeah.
"Oh, what you say?"
Well, what does it mean by obedience?
Well, I would say, that's keeping the law.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. So what would be the second quote contradiction that you'd point to in the New Testament?
I know you'll disagree on this one,
All right.
but I think it's actually important. Matthew
Yeah.
chapter 15, verse 11.
You want to
You
quote
want
it
me to
for the
read it?
audience? Yeah, you can read it.
Uh, so this is Matthew chapter 15, verse 11 in the New King James. Not what goes into the mouth defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man. Now, Christians, like when you understand the laws of Christ, Christians will point to this and say, oh, in the new covenant, we can eat unclean foods because nothing that goes into the mouth of a man defiles him. And of course, as a Hebrew, you'll point to the context and say, this is talking about Christ. He wasn't washing his hands and he was touching the bread. So, of course, a Hebraic perspective would reject, the whole unclean interpretation. But if you take it at face value, literally, he is saying you could eat pork.
Okay, but hold on a second. Why would you take it at face value if it's not supposed to be taken at face value? Like, I'll give you an example. Like in John, the 6th chapter, Christ was upon the water and he was speaking to the multitudes. And he said that y'all have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. The people there thought that he was talking about cannibalism. But then we find out in the Last Supper, it actually was a metaphor, right? His flesh represented the bread and his blood represented the wine. So obviously, we're not supposed to take that upon face value just by reading it. In fact, even if you read the chapter, which I'd recommend pulling up in your free time, John, the 6th chapter, the people around Christ literally thought that he was talking about cannibalism. He said, well, what is this that he's saying that we got to eat him? Is this cannibalism here? What is he talking about? So the people thought that he was being literal, but obviously, upon reading the text, we see he was not being literal with what he's saying. So let's correlate that back with what you said here in Matthew 15, which, I've covered this many times before, so it doesn't hurt again. Matthew chapter 15, verse 11 says, not that which goes into the mouth defiles a man, but that which comes out of the mouth, this defiles the man. I have countless people over the years who run to that verse to try to show, well, look, I can eat shrimp, crab, and lobster, because Christ said it's not that which goes in the mouth that defiles the man. But here's the problem. You need to read the Bible in context, not just read one verse. Like, look at this. If we jump up to the top of the chapter to read the context of this conversation, go to verse 1. It says, then came to Christ scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, why do thy scribes transgress the traditions of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. So that was the whole start of this conversation. The Pharisees were criticizing Christ because his apostles, they did not wash their hands before they ate food, which was a tradition that the elders lived by. So that's what this whole conversation here is about. And to just further double prove my point here, I want to jump down to the end of this whole conversation before they move on to an entirely different subject. Let's go down to verse I'll go to verse 17 and read on down. It says, do not ye understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goes into the belly and is cast out to the drought? But these things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, and blasphemies. These are the things that defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands defiles not a man. So he even reiterates in the final statement on the topic. I'll read verse 20 again. These are the things that defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. So that proves the entire response that Christ is giving is not about shrimp, crab, and lobsters, but it's actually about eating food without washing your hands, right? The bacteria and germs on your hands that get on the food you eat is not going to defile you because it will go through your body, your immune system will fight it off. And that's what it's talking about in clear context. So what do you have to say after listening to the context both before and afterwards? Mike Shears.
I think, of course, what you're saying in context, because in the context, he's under the old covenant because he didn't die yet, right? And so, of course, in context, he's not telling people to eat pork. But of course, we know that he really changed the law. That he added some new commandments, the law in Christ. And um, let me actually get this real quick. This is the same context, but instead of Matthew, it's Mark 7. Um, I don't know if you can see. Can I flip my camera somehow?
I
How
mean,
do
if
I
you
do
want to
that?
just say what it is, man, that's fine.
Okay, 1 second.
'Cause I have my Bible with me. I can just pull up if you ever need something.
Okay, 1 second. I got it. I got the verse up. I don't think y'all can see it though, but basically it says right here, if you can see it, in Mark chapter 7, verses 18 through 20. This is the Christian Standard Bible. It really depends on the Bible. Um, but it says in verse 18, he said to them, "Are you also as lacking in understanding? Don't you realize that nothing going into a person from the outside can defile him?" If you take that on face value, that would include pork. But let me continue. Verse 19, for it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach and is eliminated. Now you got these parentheses. Thus he declared all foods clean, right? Um, you could say that the translators added that parentheses, but that's clearly there though.
Okay, now that's just added on by the authors. Like say for instance, I don't know if you've ever read the book, they'll give like a reader's note on the side as to what they think such and such is talking about. So that's what that is right there. Right? They're saying, as in the people who are, you know, putting this text together for you to read, they're saying that that's what he's claiming. So that's not what Christ is saying himself, but that's what the people that are putting this together believe he's saying. So that's what that is. So that doesn't hold weight in this conversation because that's not Christ's word. That's the word of man being put onto that.
Nah, yeah, I use Christ's words as well as whatever manuscript added this, because some manuscripts have that parentheses missing, but that is in some manuscripts though.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's in the manuscript or not. That's not what Christ said. That's added on by people.
Yeah, Christ said nothing going into your mouth can defile you.
Yeah, and I just explained to
That
you
would
in the
include pork.
context what it means.
That would include pork, right?
No, sir, it would not, because the context is not about eating unclean versus clean meats. That's not the context. Yeah, like let me show you an
Uh,
example, right? Like let me show you an example. Let's go to Mark 7. Let's go to the top. It says, then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain of the scribes which came from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands often, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders. And when they come from the market, except they wash, they eat not. And many other things there be, which they have received to hold, as the washing of cups and pots and brazen vessels and tables. And then, this verse 5, it says, then the Pharisees asked him and said, why walk not thy disciples after the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? So I'm showing you one more time that even in Mark the 7th chapter, which people always like to run there or to Matthew 15, but I'm just showing that it's the exact same context. It's the same context that the whole discussion is about eating food with unclean hands. Not one verse. Now, I'm going to ask you this. Can you show me a verse in either Matthew 15 or Mark 7 where the term unclean meat or clean meat is mentioned? Is there a verse in there where it says that, sir?
well, I actually already showed you that, but you said that was in addition to the Bible.
Is it true or false? Is that not what Christ said?
What, with the washing the hands?
No, sir. You said you brought up the side note where it said, thus making all foods clean. Correct? That's what you said?
Oh yeah, I think that was added, but I'm saying it is there though.
Okay, so if I
Like,
open up,
if I buy
so
the
if I
Bible,
open up, wait,
if
so
I
by your
buy
own
this
admission, you're
Bible,
saying that you acknowledge it was added in there by your own admission.
I would say that
But sir, I'm saying you
because
just said you agree that it was added in there, right?
I don't believe in the New Testament though. 'Cause this
Okay,
is my
just
perspective.
hear what I'm saying for a second. Hear what I'm saying. I know you don't believe in the New Testament, but you're trying to bring this up to prove what I'm saying wrong. So I'm responding and saying that what you're reading there is an added on like quote by the people putting this text together for you to read and translating it. I'm saying that's not what Christ is claiming. That's what the people are putting together, and they're saying that he's saying that, but Christ himself is not saying that. That was my response.
Yeah, I understand your perspective. Um, I'm saying, of course, uh, for example, you believe you disagree with the virgin birth, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's different context to the virgin and all of that. So I'd say, yeah, I'm skeptical of that.
Right. So that's what I believe the New Testament is. I believe in context, if you take the Jewish perspective of a first century Jew, you will not get Christianity. But clearly, if you read it at face value, like with the virgin birth, the word virgin is there. Well, not it technically. I don't have to get into it, but you get what I'm saying. And the English is there. Even in Mark 7, verse 20, you know, even if it's just the added parentheses, it still says, "Thus he declare all foods clean," and uh, nothing that goes into a man defiles him. So I mean,
Okay, but let me ask you this,
even
sir. Is
though
it true? Is it true or false in context? I've shown you where Christ even reiterates the statement again, and he says, "But to eat with unwashed hands doesn't defile the man." So would you agree that if you read in context, that's what he's talking about?
I would honestly disagree.
Honestly, disagree. Well, give me a logical rundown though, because I think that reading, like say for instance, when we went to Matthew the 15th chapter, I read the top, gave the context, and then even under at the end of the discussion, he even reiterates himself again and says, "But to eat with unwashed hands doesn't defile the man." So I think that's obvious, clear in context, and that's what he's referring to. If you
I think you're
disagree,
assuming that.
what are you
You're
exactly pointing to?
So for one, we already substantiated that Christianity has clearly tampered with the New Testament.
Well,
Um,
let me just chime in on that. I don't think they tampered with the Bible. I think they're misrepresenting what the text says. Like, oh, let me give you an
it
example of the
literally
text.
says, "Does he
This is
declare all foods clean?" You can't get around that. It was
what
tampered.
translation? Excuse me, sir. What translation are you reading?
This the Christian Standard Bible, but it's in
Oh,
multiple
okay,
Bibles.
okay. So my statement stands clear. You said you're reading out of a Christian Standard Bible. Okay. Obviously, they changed certain words in there and add on like little pretext to the side in certain instances. I'm not arguing with that. In fact, I'd argue that proves my argument about what we're saying here. I'm telling you they added that on as to what they think it's talking about. So I'm agreeing with you that part's add on, but that doesn't debunk the New Testament. That just shows that people are adding things on. And I even asked you what translation you said, some type of Christian translation. Said, okay, yeah, I'm not going to argue there's probably words that are changed around in there and quotes added here or there, or different words used in different texts. I'm not going to argue that, but I call that a false translation of the Bible. So I tell people to not read that at all. I tell people to avoid that because that's a corrupted version of the Bible, is what I would argue. But real quick, before I let you respond, I want to throw this verse out here because you keep talking about, reading on face value and all that. Well, the Bible wasn't meant for everybody to understand very simply, right? There's a lot of dark sayings in the Bible that are not meant for everybody. Look at this. This is Matthew chapter 13, verse 10. It says, "And disciples came and asked him, 'Why do you speak unto them in parables?' And he answered and said unto them, Because it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but unto the rest it was not given. So it wasn't given to everybody to understand what the Bible is talking about. So that's why reading things just on face value without context can lead people down the wrong direction in understanding, like yours.
Yeah, I understand you shouldn't read it at face value, but um, like what you said with the blood, the Lord Yahweh told us not to drink blood in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23.
Right.
That's another problem that you will not be able to get around other than by saying it's a metaphor.
Well,
Um,
wait, hold on a second. You criticized me there saying, well, the only excuse you could use is say it's a metaphor. So let me understand, sir. Are you saying it's not a metaphor? When Christ said to drink his blood and eat his flesh, you're saying that's not a metaphor?
I would say that's not a metaphor
What makes you say that?
because you have to drink his blood when you do the Eucharist.
And what is that blood? Is it wine?
Catholics believe, not you, but Catholics do believe that the wine does turn into Jesus Christ's real blood.
Okay, well, obviously that's not true. That doesn't obviously
The
turn
Catholics
into.
put together your New Testament.
Can you let me finish real quick, sir? I appreciate it. I'm not going to argue with you. Yeah, the Catholics are clearly wrong if they believe that it's literally turning into blood that they're drinking. But the fact is, the Bible is comparing the wine unto Christ's blood. It's not saying it literally is his blood. It's also not literally saying that we're eating his flesh by taking part in the communion with the bread, but it's just to represent, right, as a remembrance of him. But it's not supposed to be taken as literal, obviously.
So should I symbolically kill my little brother?
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. Let's say I just, for whatever reason, I just walk up to my little brother with a knife and just pretend like I'm about to stab him. I don't. Like, do you think the Lord would be okay with that? It's symbolic. You're not actually doing it.
Well, what would be symbolic about that? That would be like premeditated murder, right?
Well, not if you don't stab him now. You just like pull it out, or you just make a joke. Maybe not with a real knife. You know. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know the comparable you're making there, man.
okay, how about? I mean, it's kind of hard to make a direct analogy.
Let me read this real quick. Let me read this for you. This is John chapter 6, verse 47 on down. It says, Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me has everlasting life. I am that bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness, and they are dead. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread which come down from heaven. If any man eateth this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. The Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Then Christ said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man, and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoso eateth my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will rise him up at the last day. For my flesh is meat indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He that eats my flesh and drinks my blood dwells in me, and I in him. And another one, it says, As the living Father has sent me, and I by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. This is that bread which come down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. So that's one instance where Christ is comparing his body unto the bread and the wine. But it's not supposed to be taken as literal, is what my argument is.
So, okay, do you think that he would tell you to symbolically commit a sin?
No, he's not telling you to commit a sin there.
Because according to Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23, the Lord tells us not to drink blood because blood has the life in it. That's directly opposite of what Jesus Christ is saying. He's saying, drink my blood because it has the life in it. So is God telling us to symbolically sin?
No, sir, he's not, because it's not supposed to be taken as literal. It's a metaphorical example. It's not literal.
Not according to the Catholics who put together your Bible. But if you want to say that, that's okay.
What do you, let me ask you though, what do you mean by put together my Bible? Didn't they put yours together too, including the Old Testament that's in there?
No.
All right,
Isaiah wrote Isaiah.
let me show you something real quick, because you don't seem to be very knowledgeable on these topics, my friend. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I have a
What
lot of
about the
experience
Masoretic
with these
text? The
conversations.
Masoretic text has nothing to do with the Catholics.
I didn't ask you about that.
Yeah. If I read the Masoretic text right now, what does that have to do with the Catholics?
Well, first of all, I would argue that the New Testament was around before the founding of the Catholic Church. So your argument holds no water either way, my friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you, if you're gonna sit there and say that about me, even if we look at the history, the New Testament itself was invented before the Catholic Church even existed, right? So you have no argument there. But I want to show you this. I'm going to give you another example where Christ talks about the flesh and the blood. There's Matthew chapter 26 and verse 26. It says, this is the Last Supper here before Christ is crucified. It says, and as they were eating, Christ took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink thenceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Well, that's a powerful verse right there. You know why? Because it proves that it's not literally his blood. It's actually wine. If you read the last verse I showed, verse 29, is telling him he's not going to drink this wine with them, right? This fruit of the vine, until he drinks it new with them in the Father's kingdom. But the point of the matter is that the wine is symbolically to represent Christ's blood that he shed for many upon the cross. I mean, it's just that simple, my friend. I mean, you're welcome to disagree, but I mean, I think anybody that looks honestly into this will clearly see what Christ is talking about here. So that's another part where I'd say you're wrong on. Do you have like a third part you want to bring up about the New Testament before we move on to the hell topic?
I would say Jesus Christ was a Gnostic. He was not a Jew. I believe that the New Testament, is really, pulling from different traditions, of the Greeks and the Egyptians. Serapis Christus, you know of him, right? So, you already know about Serapis, so it's no point in even trying to, beat around the bush with it, That's where I believe this New Testament is coming from. So, I wouldn't. I wouldn't even take the New Testament, like, because when you actually read it, like some of it you could tell this Greek mythology mixed with some of the Hebraic tradition.
What would you
That's what
say
I
is
would say.
Greek mythology in there if you had to give one example?
We could literally just go into the actual manuscripts of the New Testament. You agree there's no Hebrew New Testament, right?
The New Testament is written in Greek.
Right. So let's get.
Right, but I just hear what I'm asking you though, because I disagree with your statement. You're saying that we could find like Greek mythology that's found in the New Testament. So in response, I asked you Would you have like one example of Greek mythology found in the New Testament? That's what I asked.
Of course, let me get Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. Now, I'm actually looking at the Bible Hub, the interlinear. Um,
What
Let me
chapter
see.
verse you said?
Matthew 16 and 18. Can you see
Okay.
it? Or?
I mean, I can pull it up on my end. You can read what you got.
So basically, this is where Christ is talking to Peter, talking about Peter is the rock. And basically, it's saying the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. So that's literally Hades is Greek mythology, bro. That's literally hell in Greek mythology.
All right, for the listening audience, describe to me what Hades means from your research.
Greek mythology. It
I'm
means
asking you
hell,
to define what
basically.
it is.
Yeah, it means hell. Like not hell as in thermonuclear missiles hitting America, but hell as in you're burning underground and shit like that.
Yeah, I would argue that this is not referring to this Greek mythology thing. I'd say this is just a metaphor of speech. It's basically saying that, anything that comes up against it is going to be, hewn down, right? Nothing's going to be able to prevail against it. So a hell, which I don't know what translation you're reading, 'cause mine doesn't say Hades, mine says hell. Perhaps you're using another translation. But the point of the matter
I'm in
is
I'm
that
in the Greek
hell.
manuscript.
Okay, well, let's say this. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, what you're using, what I'm using. The point of the matter is that these words have context to them. So hell can mean a condition of suffering that's upon this physical earth, right? A person can go through a hellish like condition. Like, I'll give an example. Like some dude that maybe lost both his legs in a car accident and has to be wheeled around everywhere for the rest of his life. Hey, that's a form of hell right there. That's he can never walk again in his life. That's like a hellish condition that he's in there. Or on the other hand, somebody can metaphorically be living in like a heavenly state. Like some people that win the lottery, might be multimillionaires, never got to lift a finger again to work. Hey, that's like a heavenly like state right there, living in luxury, right? Peace. Meanwhile, other people are living in bad conditions. So heaven and hell, depending on the context, can represent a condition upon the earth is what it is. So I guess since we're here about this whole health thing, we can speak about that now that we brought it up. So I don't want to misrepresent you. So can you explain to the audience your view about hell and all that? Because I saw you mention some stuff about this on the Discord, but I want to give you a chance to enlighten our listening audience as to your position.
Um, so I believe in Babylon, which I believe is America, today. Or I do believe that the wars will happen and the nuclear missiles. Um, but I don't think that's Hades, where the devil with the horns is picking you with a pitchfork and burning you for eternity. That's what I believe the New Testament is actually teaching.
Yeah,
Because
and,
it's
that's,
clearly it's
I'm
in
sorry,
Greek.
go ahead.
Clearly
Go
it's in
ahead.
Greek, right? The New Testament is not in Hebrew; it's in Greek. Then we see Hades right here in the Greek New Testament, Matthew 16:18. Uh, we know in the Hebrew, or no, in the Greek manuscripts of the New Testament, because assuming the Hebrew ever existed, right? Um, we know at least in the Greek manuscripts that we still have today, the Messiah's name is pronounced Jesus. Okay, Zeus is literally tied with Hades in Greek mythology. Just look up the etymology of Hades, right? And
Okay.
of course, in the English, let me finish real quick.
All right.
But in the English, it would say the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Well, what are the gates of hell if that's not, uh, 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 you know, the hell in Greek mythology, right?
Now, let me
Because
respond real quick how I know that's not the case, because the concept of there being a hell, like say for instance, people claim, oh, well, died and went to hell, or, seen the underworld, right? They arrived at the gates and got pulled in by demons. I would argue that idea is not real. That would be my argument. So I would argue that the Bible can't be teaching that type of mythology because that concept doesn't exist in the Bible. It's just people misunderstand what the text is speaking of. So let me ask you a question. You mentioned that, well, the New Testament's talking about like this devil with horns and a pitchfork waiting to like cook people or whatever in hell. Where would you point to say that? If you had to give like say two examples in the New Testament, where would you point to prove that? 'Cause I
Oh,
disagree.
that's easy. I wouldn't say, exactly with the devil and the pitchfork, but
But
scorpions
I'm
at
saying
least.
that's what you said earlier, though, right? So some devil like horned dude with a pitchfork. Isn't that what you said
No,
earlier that the New Testament teaches?
no, I'm saying that the New Testament has. You already know about Serapis Christus, bro. Let's not pretend. GMS tell you about Serapis. So basically, I'm saying the New Testament combines Greek mythology with the Hebrew tradition. But we could read Revelation chapter 9. Um, this is Revelation 9, verse 6. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee them. Um, Let me go back to verse 5. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they that should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. So, um, right here it's saying people seek to die, but they won't find it. Um, that's, to me, it's kind of reminds me of, uh,
Okay, so let me
with the
ask you this
devil.
real quick. So are you saying that this is a hell right here you're reading about?
I would say it's, well, obviously you're going to read it from the Hebrew perspective and
I
exegete
didn't
it.
say
You're
I
not going to.
didn't wait. Hold on a second, buddy. I didn't say anything about what I view. I'm just asking you to clarify. Are you saying that this is like happening in hell? Is what I'm asking you.
Uh, Honestly, I'm not too sure. I would say this is on Earth from my
Okay, so
perspective.
okay, so
Yeah, it
let
says
me
shall
ask you
start
this.
with fall. I
Okay,
don't
let
know
me
about the
ask you this.
bottomless pit
So
part though.
why are you going here then to prove some type of hell thing if you agree this is upon the physical earth? So like, doesn't that refute the whole statement?
He says, and he opened the bottomless pit. Now that's way different from America getting hit with a missile. A bottomless pit, that's kind of more similar to Greek mythology where hell is underground, right?
I disagree. I'd say the bottom of the pit. Well, first of all, I believe this already happened. That this isn't talking about something in the future. This particular prophecy already came to pass, but that's a debate for another time. I'd say this is talking about the First World War, right? John seeing these fighter jets when he seen this vision and had to describe them the best way he could with the first century vocabulary he had. So I definitely disagree with you on this. I believe this already came to pass. So that's a big point of contention there. You view this as a future thing. I view this as a past thing. So yeah, we're going to have to disagree on this point, man. Do you have anything else in the New Testament you
Um,
point to as hell? Because I reject this one.
Let me actually get Revelation 14 really quickly.
Okay.
Um, oh, it's not. But let me see Revelation 14. But y'all can't lie and say I didn't just show the bottomless pit. Like that's underground apparently. But y'all
No,
can't pretend.
no, sir. First of all, do you know how deep the humans have dug into the ground so far?
I think like 8 miles. I think.
Yes, sir. It's 8 miles, so nobody knows what's under the earth. Thousands of miles they claim. But I'd argue that the bottomless pit's not talking about an actual pit. I'd argue it's talking about Europe if you read the context and the history on it. But again, I think we're going to have to completely disagree as to this concept. And just so I understand by this notion, if you're saying the bottomless pit is hell, So you believe that maybe, 50,000 miles down, there's hell down there, right? Like people literally under our feet today are like burning in
Nah,
hellfire right now. Is that true or false?
no, that's silly. That's not a Hebrew concept. But I'm saying, according to the Greek New Testament, Greek, right? Greek mythology, then yes, that's what I would be saying. The
All right,
bottomless
so
pit
you're
is
so you're
underground.
claiming that the New Testament saying that like hell is like deep under the earth is what you're claiming, right?
Partially, I would say, yeah, basically.
Okay. But go to your Revelation 14. What do you have in there to bring up?
Um, this is Revelation 14, verse 11. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest, day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. So clearly it says the smoke of their torment ascendeth forever, right? So the smoke in itself, right? The smoke of the flame, ascends forever. But also the people have no rest, day nor night. So the people clearly won't rest day nor night as this fire is going up, and they're feeling the indignation. Um, to me, it seems like they're feeling this fire forever. They have no rest day nor night. And of course, in the Old Testament, hell isn't eternal. So if
Yeah, well, I would
clearly,
argue. Well, hold on a second. I would argue if you hear in the New Testament when it talks about forever and ever, I'd argue that's not literal either. That means a very long time, but that doesn't mean literally forever without end. That's just a misconception. Real quick, I want to show you an example of how I agree. Don't get it mistaken. I agree. There's going to be a judgment soon that's going to involve fire where wicked people are going to be burned for their sins. But I would argue that's happening upon this physical earth. It's not happening in like a mystical dimension people go when they pass away. I'd argue that's a lie. So when we read about, the smoke of torment and fire and flames, that's real, but that's going to happen on this physical earth, not in like a magical hell place. That would be the point in contention. Now, real quick, I want to show a verse. This is Revelation chapter 20. In verse 14, it says, "And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire, for this is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life, they were cast into the lake of fire." So the point of the matter is it says hell was cast into the lake of fire. Well, what's that mean? Well, hell's talking about a condition, right? So a condition on this physical earth. So the lake of fire and hell are not the same thing because it said that hell gets thrown into the lake of fire. So they can't be the same thing. So I would argue that this is happening upon the physical earth, not in some other dimension that you're claiming the New Testament is claiming. So I'd argue the burden of proof is on you to show that this is happening like either under the earth or in another dimension or something like that. I'd argue the burden of proof is on you to prove that, my friend.
let me see. Uh, well, I already did that. We already agreed that it's on the earth. I showed you the bottomless pit. You just disagree. You think
No,
that's
no.
about
Here,
World
here,
War
here. What,
One.
here, what I'm saying. I don't think you listen to what I'm saying. You're trying to argue not what you believe, but you're trying to argue that the New Testament is teaching that people go to a hell like under the earth and burn forever. I'm arguing that that is not true. I'm arguing that statement is a lie. That's what I'm trying to debunk that you're claiming here. So I'm asking you, you make these statements. I'm asking you to show me this in the New Testament. That's what I'm asking.
Wait, show you what specifically?
I'll say it again. You claim that the New Testament teaches that there is a hell that people go to and burn forever. I'm saying that is not true. So I'm asking you to show me evidence of that statement. And I don't believe you've shown much of that. Now, real quick, I want to show an Old Testament reference here. This is Isaiah chapter, let me see real quick. Just 1 second. Okay. Well, actually, two in this chapter. Let's go to Isaiah 66, verse 15, about the fire and flames. For to behold, the Lord will come with fire, with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render anger up with fury and rebukes of fire upon the people. For by fire and his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord will be many. Let's jump down here to verse 24. It says, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be ever quenched, and they shall be in a whoring unto all flesh. So that goes back to the verses that he quoted about the eternal flames, or the flames never die, right? Never quenched. Well, that's an Old Testament reference. And by the way, this is a good add-on to what is that, Mark the 9th chapter that people go to, where the flames never die, and the worm never dies and fires never quenched. Something along those lines people bring up in Mark the 9th chapter. Well, this goes along with that. So I'll throw the mic back to you then.
All right, so in Isaiah 66, it says the worm shall not die. You know, the worms that are eating the body. It doesn't
Right.
say, actually, let me get that in the, right now. I don't want to misquote it. See, this is Isaiah chapter 66, verse 24 in the King James, where basically we know there will be fire, right? But it's not going to be forever, because we know that in verse 24, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of men. That means that the bodies are dead. It's a carcass that have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die. You know, the worm's eating them. You know, you got to understand what the worm is. Neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be a pouring unto all flesh. Right? So these are carcasses, right? These aren't living people just consciously being tortured.
Okay, now let me stop you real quick. Do you agree that those carcasses were once living people?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So that's what I'm arguing the New Testament teaches. Now look at this is Mark 9, verse 44. It says, where the worm dies not and the fire is never quenched. Would you say it's talking about the same thing as Isaiah 66?
I would say he's quoting it, but I think they're using it different.
How would you say it's being used different? Well, what would make you say that?
Because, you know, like, for example, the book of Enoch says the angels sinned, right? But you disagree with that concept, right?
Yeah, the angels never sin, no.
So, of course, like, what I believe the New Testament is actually misquoting the Old Testament, right?
I
And
understand you're
twisting the story.
claiming that, but I'm asking you to demonstrate that, because I don't believe you're demonstrating that. Like, let me ask you one more time. I'll make it simple. What I'm asking is you to show me where the New Testament is saying that people are like under the earth in hell, burning forever without end. The certain verses you go to try to claim that, I'm responding and refuting those claims, saying that it's being misrepresented and whatnot. So don't get it mistaken. I'm not arguing that like the Roman Catholic Church up the road from me, if I go ask them the same question, they're going to tell me what you're saying. I acknowledge that. But what I'm saying is they're lying and they're deceived. They're not teaching the truth. They're lying upon the text and teaching people deception. A lot of them, it's because that's what they were born and raised believing. It's not they're trying to deliberately trick you, but that's what they believed and, grew up believing their whole life. So that's why they're teaching that and whatnot. But the point is that their concept is not in the Bible. It's rather a misrepresentation of the text is what I'm claiming.
Yeah, I understand your perspective. I mean, I would actually disagree and say the New Testament is a completely different Bible from the Old Testament.
Okay, well, before you say that claim, let me just read something real quick. This is the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, and verse 16. It says, and moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, and that iniquity was there. So the place of judgment, where you're judged for your sins, happens upon this physical earth, not somewhere where you pass away. Because a lot of people hold the concept that, just like the Catholic Church, right? When you die, you're either up in heaven now with angels in Christ, or you're, down in hell on fire. It's like, that's not true. The Bible
Well,
teaches that when you die, you rest, you sleep. There's many
well, yeah,
verses
the
we
Old
could get
Testament
on that.
teaches that.
No, no, no,
Well,
no.
yeah,
I
the
would
Old
argue the New
Testament.
Testament.
Well, let me
Wait,
finish.
wait.
Let me
So the New
finish.
Testament doesn't teach that?
I'm saying that the Old Testament teaches Sheol where you rest. I'm saying
Right.
the New Testament teaches there's a first and a second death. You resurrect, right? Well, we can't forget that part. I'm saying the
Yeah,
New
but
Testament
but, ho- but
teaches
hold
that
hold
you'll
on a second.
resurrect into the lake of fire.
Excuse me, sir. Hold on a second. Nobody's skipping over a resurrection. I teach the resurrection, but that's not the subject matter here tonight. That's being talked about. Now, I want to
Now,
ask you
don't
a
beat around the
question.
bush.
Nobody, the only one that's beating about the bush is you, my friend. Like the
You
great
ain't even let
example
me
would
finish.
be
Let me get
Mark
Revelations 20 and
5
10.
and
There'll be
Matthew
tormented day
15.
and night forever, and shall be tormented day and night forever. You didn't let me get to that verse. Revelation 20
Excuse
and
me,
10. They shall be
excuse me, sir, but
tormented day and night forever.
if you listened, I don't know if you're slow or something, but I directly answered the forever and day and night. I directly answered the question and said that that's not literal. That's metaphoric of speech. That's not literal. That was what my
No,
answer was. Now, now real quick,
you can say that.
I
I don't
have a
have a problem
question
with
for
that.
you. Hey, I don't, can you be quiet for a second, please? I thank you. Now, you claimed that in the Old Testament it teaches that when people pass away, they sleep. I agree with you on that. That is true. But you then claimed that the New Testament doesn't teach that. So I want to show you an example and want to see what you have to say about this. This is John chapter 11, verse 11 on down. It says, and that these things he said, and after he said unto them, our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he does well. Howbeit Christ spoke of his death, but they have thought that he spoke of him taking a rest and sleep. Then Christ said unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Do you agree with the text?
I don't believe that, but yeah, I agree.
Okay, so how can you say that the New Testament doesn't teach that you sleep when you pass away? Matter of fact, before
Let
you
me finish,
answer,
because you didn't even. Okay.
yeah, just you should give me 20 more seconds and I'll throw the mic back to you. I want to show one more example of the New Testament showing that people sleep when they pass away, not burn forever. This is let's go to Acts chapter 7 to the death of Stephen. Verse 54. And when they heard these things, they were cut to the heart, and they gnashed upon him with their teeth. But he, being full of the Holy Ghost, looked it up steadfast into heaven, and saw the glory of God and Christ standing on the right hand of God, and said, Behold, I see the heavens open, and the Son of Man standing on the right hand of God. And they cried with a loud voice, and stopped their ears, and ran upon him with one accord. And they cast him out of the city, and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their clothes at the young man's feet, whose name was Saul, and they stoned Stephen, calling upon God, and saying, Lord Christ, receive my spirit. And he kneeled down, and cried with a loud voice, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. And when he said this, he fell asleep. So that's another example in the New Testament where the Bible compares dying unto sleep. What is your response to that?
For one, that's really disingenuous. I never said the New Testament didn't teach Sheol. Sheol means, the grave where the souls rest. That's in the Old Testament as well. I'm saying during the second resurrection, right? Because you have resurrection. That's when they go into the lake of fire.
Okay, let me see if I can understand this one more time. When you said that the New Testament teaches hell, so that's one reason you reject it. You mentioned the Catholics, how they believe that if you die, you go to hell and whatnot, Satan's there for pitchfork. So I am refuting that claim because you're claiming the New Testament claims those teachings. I'm saying I disagree,
I
and I'm showing you why that's not the case. So I don't get why you don't get that factor.
No, you're twisting my words. What I said was the Catholics are pulling from Greek mythology and twisting some of what the Old Testament is saying. I'm
Okay,
saying yes, some of
sir,
the
is it
concept.
true
Let
or
me
false?
finish. Let me
Is it
finish. Let me finish. Let me finish.
no?
Some
You're gonna wait a second. Is it true or false? You said that the all right. Well, he ran, right. A little clown ran for that. I was gonna let him speak, but he wants to act like a clown. But y'all heard what he said directly, right? Y'all heard what he said directly. He said that the New Testament teaches Greek mythology. Tell me if I'm wrong. Am I lying on him? Is that not what he claimed? He claimed that the New Testament teaches Greek mythology. So, clown, don't sit there and claim, oh, well, you're just adding that to me to make me look bad. Dummy, you literally said like 30 minutes ago that the New Testament took the Greek mythology. That's what you said. I'm going to give him one more chance here. Yo, are you there? Yo.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay. So let's say this one more time before I let you talk. Is it true or false you said like 30 minutes ago that one criticism you have of the New Testament is that they include Greek mythology? That's what you said, correct? You
I
there
would
now?
say, yeah, that's what I said. Let me actually expound on it. I'm saying
Okay.
they mixed some of what the Greek mythology taught with the Hebrew tradition. Yes, Sheol is in the New Testament. Yes, Babylon being destroyed is, and then you also have some of their teachings added on to the Old Testament's teachings.
Okay. So am I right or wrong to keep mentioning how you were claiming that the New Testament has Catholic or Greek mythology claims in it? You agree with me? That's what you said earlier, correct?
In the manuscripts of the Greek, I wouldn't say explicitly though.
Okay. So what are you saying that I'm like overlooking or not being honest with? I'm just a little confused.
I think you're being disingenuous on a lot because
Well, again,
this is supposed to be.
I'm giving you the chance to elaborate. I'm curious of why you're saying that because I think I'm being very respectful with you on here. So I'm giving you a chance to explain why you feel that way.
I already went into. Well, the New Testament is already in Greek. I already showed you Hades. Being in the New Testament, whether that's just a word they wanted to use because it's in a different language, right? That's a possibility. Um, but actually, I already showed that too. But let me real quick.
Okay, but here's what I would argue why you're doing that. That doesn't discredit the New Testament. Like I'll give you an example. Apostle Paul was a Roman, but he was also an Israelite. You agree with me?
According to the text, yeah.
Okay, good. So just because the New Testament's written in another language, that doesn't now mean that it's not inspired. You know what I'm saying? I would argue that's not really a fair equivalence to argue. Just like how
I
Paul, even
never
though he was
said
a Roman, he was a Roman citizen, but he was still an Israelite by blood.
I never said the New Testament being in Greek makes it uninspired. That's
That was
a straw
one of the
man.
claims, though, right? Like
That's a
one out
straw
of many.
man. That's a straw man.
Sir, let
Now,
me. Is it true or false, sir? That's one out of many claims that you would make that make the New Testament doubtful. One out of many. Would you say that?
Greek inspiration, yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so if you confirming that, why are you saying that I'm like misrepresenting? If you agree that that's one of the reasons that you were rejected, maybe not the only one, but at one of them that you'd quote.
I'm not saying because it's in Greek, I reject it. I'm saying because of the concepts in Greek mythology, I would reject it. But I'm saying more so, um, even with like the resurrection. Like, what do you think about the first and second death? Like, I think
I'll
that's
answer
way
that. I'll
more.
answer one question real quick. Rich, is that you or is that a troll? You hear me, Rich?
Oh,
All right, that's fine. I just wanted to confirm it's not someone trying to sneak on here. All right, you're cool. You're cool. So go ahead, Enoch. You can re-ask the question. I apologize, I did not hear it.
so what do you think about the first and second death? if that's not, well, yeah, just what about the first second though?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer it this way: the resurrection is talking about when Christ comes back a second time and redeems his people for everlasting life. Right. That's what I'd argue the resurrection of the just. And as far as the resurrection of the wicked, well, they're being resurrected, and it says that they're thrown into fire. But again, I'd argue that's on the physical earth in the future, not in some mystical place. But that would be my answer for the resurrection.
Right. Now, so you said people don't die and go to hell. Technically, according to the New Testament, they do. Not immediately, but at the end of time, they will be raised into the lake of
Well,
fire. And
not
that's what
one,
GMS teaches too.
no,
That's what
no,
GMS
sir.
teaches.
Hold on. What? Excuse me, sir. Don't tell me what they teach, because I've been watching their videos for nearly 12 years. I know. What they teach is that hell's a physical condition on this earth, not in a place like under the earth or in another dimension. That's what we're
I'm not
refuting.
speaking on what
But
GMS teaches.
hear out what I'm saying. We're saying that there is going to be a judgment in the future where God's going to punish the wicked by fire. That is true, but that's not in a mystical location. That's physically upon this earth that we live on, is where people are going to be judged by fire. That is our argument. So we're debunking the concept that these churches go around and preach that, oh, if you're bad, you'll go right to hell when you die. It's like, no, that's not what the Bible says. Sure, there's obviously a punishment for sin, of course, but that doesn't happen the day that you pass away. That's what we're arguing.
Well, I'm arguing according to the New Testament that those sinners that died will be resurrected into the lake of fire, whether it's eternal or just, for a few minutes
Okay, let me ask you this question. According to the New Testament, where's the lake of fire at?
on the earth. I
Okay,
don't know
then.
where
So,
you
so
would
what?
place
So
it.
what is? So what is the argument then? Like, that's literally what I'm saying.
No, you're trying to make it sound like I'm saying something that I'm not. I'm
No,
saying
but
that
sir, I'm saying that you're trying to make it sound like I'm saying something I'm not. You get what I'm saying? Like I just clarified about the lake of fire, and you seem to be in agreement with it. So I'm just not sure what you're in
you
disagreement
b-
if we seem to be in
you
agreement on.
believe you believe Revelation chapter 9 is about World War I.
Yes.
Clearly, that's
Well,
your
hold
interpretation.
on,
That's
a
your
second.
interpretation.
Hold on a
That is
second.
not.
Wait, Enoch, hold on a second. What I said is that the top part about it, about the locust, that's talking about World War I. But then when you read on down in the chapter,
That's
it
your
then
interpretation.
goes into another event, which ironically is the event that will cascade into the creation of the lake of fire. So I did not claim the entire chapter was talking about World War I. I claimed a portion of it is, not the entire thing, just to correct you on that.
Anyways, you still said that, so that's your interpretation.
What can you just so I don't get misrepresented, what did I claim on it? Can you tell me?
For one, you're being disingenuous. People, you're clearly not being honest.
Hey
But
Enoch, hey Enoch, can you be
dude, I'm saying
sincere?
that for the
Hey,
audience. I'm saying
hey,
that for the
hey,
audience. I'm saying that for the audience, not you.
Enoch, is it true or false that I said the entire chapter was talking about World War I, or a certain verse that
Nobody's
you
talking
brought up?
about the entire chapter. I'm saying
Okay,
you
so
said
so
that's
what so
World
what are
War
you
One.
bringing it up to say
You
then? So what are
you
you bringing it up to
interpreted
say?
that verse, whatever you talking about was about World War I. I do not interpret it as that. Okay, so stop trying to make me interpret that as World War I. That's what you're really
I
trying to
never
do.
I never said that you
That's
were
what you're really
trying to
trying to
interpret
do.
it. I
That's what you're really trying
buddy,
to do.
I never. Well, first of all,
You trying to
I didn't
make me
think you
interpret
even.
it your way.
Why do you got? Can you just be respectful and I'll allow you to speak? Why you gotta overtalk me? Like
All right,
I
you can
don't get
speak.
what's
My
going
bad,
on
man.
there. That's okay, no worries. Um, But yeah, I understand that you're not saying that. Hell, I was thinking to myself, man, this guy's never heard this idea before, so this is going to be a shock to him. So obviously, I don't believe you're saying that. Obviously, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I don't agree with that, but you could
All right. Well, I'll tell you what,
believe that
man.
though.
I'll give you like 10 more minutes. You got one more point you want to bring up on the topic?
What about hell or the New
I mean,
Testament?
really, man, at this point, it could be anything. It could be hell, it could be about David, could it be about Christ, whatever you want. I'll give you the floor. You got like 10 more minutes. What do you got to bring up?
Um, Let me see. It's a verse. Hold on. Uh, what do you think about it? I guess I'll get this Trinity because I honestly, uh, let me get that verse.
And what's it relate to?
Just the Trinity.
Oh, the
I wouldn't
Trinity
say,
doctrine. I didn't hear yet. First, you're asking about like God, the Son, and Holy Spirit as one is what you're asking.
yeah, like I know GMS doctrine, right? I've been
Yeah.
around the One West, but when you read verses like Revelation chapter 19, verse 16, it says, I'll read the English Standard Version. On his robe and on his thigh, he has the name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Um, that kind of seems like he's saying that, uh, I don't know, he's King of Kings and Lord of Lords, just the top
Well,
guy.
I think that I think it's very simple what it's saying. It's saying when he returns to the earth, that's going to be his name above all other kings and lords upon the earth. I think it's very simple to understand, right? He's just saying that he's like the top of the top over all of these kings. I don't get it mistaken. When Christ comes back, there's going to be other kingdoms on earth, but his kingdom's going to be the authority reigning supreme over all those other kingdoms. Just like how even today, like let's use America as an example. America is the most powerful nation on earth, but there's other dictatorships, there's other nations that are ruling territories. But if America demands something, they do it. They bow to her bidding and her will, even though they'll allow them to have rulership over some territory. So today, America is, the big bad guy at top, controlling and running things, right? They're the top one, even though there's other nations, strong nations around the world, but they're under her. Just like when Christ comes back, he's going to be the top king, but there's going to be other kings underneath him that have to bow to him and serve him. Like I'll give an example. Like in Revelation 21 or 22, it talks about the kings of the earth bringing their gold and riches to the gates of the kingdom of heaven. Why? Well, because Christ and his kingdom is on top of all these other kingdoms that are going to be dominated and ruled over. That's my response.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. With that verse, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, yo, Enoch, it's good to bring you up here, man. Right, good conversation. Even though we disagree, it was a good conversation, man.
Yeah, man, it was good. Yeah, I think,
Man, do you got a YouTube channel as well, or what do you got?
yeah, it's my name right there, Priest of War.
All right. I mean, hey, man, if you want to take and re-upload this conversation for your audience, you're welcome to do that.
All right, man, appreciate it. All right, talking to
Yeah,
you.
no worries, no worries.
All right, man, you have a good one.
You as well, my friend. You have a good night.
All right, shalom.
Okay, so at least we got that situation handled there. So I think he's a cool guy, but I mean he's definitely deceived. right? He's definitely deceived, right? Sometimes people can be a cool, kind person, but be deceived, right? And not know what they're talking about. Like, I'll give an example. Yeah, sounds like a cool guy, but guess what? He rejects Christ. Hey, John says, what is that? John, the third chapter says, he that doesn't believe on the Son, he's condemned already. So, hey, if Enoch doesn't accept Christ, well, he's already condemned. And that's what the Bible says. Right? The Bible says that if he doesn't accept Christ, well, he's already condemned for that. So I hope that he, changes his view and whatnot. But if he doesn't, well, hey, he's already toast. He's done for if he doesn't change his mind soon. And I hope he does, right? I hope that for the guy. But, you can't force anybody to, believe anything. You know what I'm saying? You can try to correct people, as I talked about at the beginning of the stream. You can try to correct people, put people on the right track and whatnot. But, at the end of the day, you can't force people to believe, anything. A lot of people, hey, the Apocrypha says many have been deceived by their own vain faults and their opinions. And that's just what it is. It's very clear to see, that a lot of people out here, are not going around speaking or teaching the truth. Like, I'll give you an example. I saw the other day that Primal Man, right? You all remember that clown, right, with Gonzo? Like 3-4 years ago, those clowns were going around teaching this, preterism. And then, last week I contacted Primal Man, said, hey, man, how's it going? I haven't seen you around in like 3 years or whatnot. And it turns out that this dude, oh, well, he's not the preterist anymore. It's like, okay. And then he's like, well, I don't really believe in the Bible or any of that anymore. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, hey, I guess it just bears the record to show that, you guys were like never speaking the truth anyway. Y'all were, clearly teaching a lie. Hell, I guess on one hand, it's good for them that they're not going around thinking that, oh, well, they're in the kingdom today or whatnot. Well, at least they're smart enough to see through that. But, to throw the entire text out, I mean, that's ridiculous. Totally ridiculous right there. Let me see real quick. Okay. Yo, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, somebody just tried to join the panel. Let me drop a fresh link in the chat for you. Maybe that'll help out. Hell, if I do bring anybody else up here, it's only going to be one more person tonight. I mean, I wasn't planning on going on, a 3 or 4 hour stream tonight. Just 2 hours. Typically, I view the fair amount of time for a live stream is like typically 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? An hour is a little short. 3 hours might be a little long, but 2 hours, 2 hours is reasonable. Of course, it depends on, how full the panel is and, what's going on in the live chat down below too. But typically I view like 2 hours as being like a sweet spot for, live discussions and whatnot. Man, rain's picking up where I'm at here. All right, let me see real quick. Yo, can you hear me? Yeah, Jared Genesis, you're in the server, man. All right, I think he's having an issue with the microphone. Yo, if you got a phone, it's probably easier to join compared to like a laptop if you're trying to use that. Um, So I'd recommend joining by way of your phone if you got that, man. Fun fact about me, actually, I don't even own a damn computer. I just got a tablet, got, a phone, and I got, backup phone to, use, well, actually, I've been using it tonight. I got it on my side so I can pull up, on the side screen, like if I need like a text or some type of, quote or something, or, need to message somebody, I can quickly do that on my second device here. So I don't have to exit the StreamYard on my main, phone that I'm using here. So I got a second device to my side. If I need to bring up a verse, or a news article, or, message somebody or whatever I need, I can just quickly go to that device and do it separately from my main one that I'm using to talk on. You know what I'm saying? All right, let me see here. Huh. But yeah, the dude they had on here before, man, right? That was that Enoch character. I mean, real interesting guy, right? Interesting guy. Sitting there saying, "Oh, well, the blood of Christ, you know, well, that's literal, or that's supposed to be viewed as literal." I mean, but what are you talking about? Supposed to be viewed as literal? I mean, I went to, book, chapter, verse, and showed that it's clearly not supposed to be, taken as literal on face value. You know what I'm saying? The dude's so eager to just disprove the New Testament. It's like, chill out a little bit, man. It's like you're, going above and beyond to try to refute the Old Testament. But little do you know is that both the Old and the New Testament actually go hand in hand with one another. Right? There isn't contradiction between the two. They're both teaching the same message, right? To, believe, follow God's commandments, be good to other people, and and whatnot, right? Watch what you're eating, right? Follow God's commandments. That's what both the Old and the New Testament are teaching. Some people try to pretend, oh, well, well, that was in the Old Testament. That's not, that's not today. That's not today. But what do you mean that's not today? I mean, did Christ not say to keep the commandments? Like, that's literally what Christ said. So it just shows a lot of people are just in error, just making shit up, for whatever reason they have. Let's go here. This is Ecclesiasticus chapter 13, verse 4, and Ecclesiasticus chapter 12, verse 14 and 13. It says, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work in a judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil." Right, so the whole duty of man was to, obey God and live in accordance with his commandments. So, like, what makes you think that in the New Testament that notion's like all of a sudden, null and void? Oh, well, Christ said you can eat what you want. It's like, well, where are you claiming that? Oh, well, well, this Christian translation over here says that just clearing all foods clean. It's like, okay, well, did Christ say that, or is that like a narrator's like add-on quote? Like, come on, man, y'all need to do a little bit better than this. And to be fair towards him, he's not the only guy who's brought this argument up. Obviously, over the years, I've dealt with, dozens of people who bring up the very same argument, to try to prove that all foods are like made clean today, oh, you can eat shrimp, crab, lobster, and whatnot because it's made clean. It's like, that's not clearly not what it says. You just don't have reading comprehension skills. Clearly by reading what he's talking about in context, he can clearly see that is not alluding to that. Just some people today, some people seem to have like an agenda today, like Enoch. Not saying he's like some wicked, terrible guy or nothing, but you know, people like that seem to have like an agenda, saying, "Oh, well, gotta." paint the New Testament as being like some horrible, evil thing, but the Old Testament is like some peachy cream type of stuff. Well, you know what I find funny? You know what I find absolutely hilarious? Is there's people out there who will take both sides of the perspective. Like Enoch claiming that the Old Testament's the real word of God, New Testament is completely fake and whatnot. But then there's other people out there that will claim, well, no, the New Testament's all peachy and creamy, but the Old Testament is like so evil and horrible, and that's Satan. That's the real God. So the Old Testament is false, but the New Testament is right. And then Enoch's on there like, oh, well, the Old Testament's right, but the New Testament is like so evil. You know what I'm saying? It's like really, really weird. It's really weird if you take a second and just think about these doctrines that, people are going around the internet, to go around and preach and teach. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? It's just really bizarre and strange. Whoever this is in the back chat, I don't know this name here, so let me know in the back chat if you have a subject matter on the mind, and I'll see what I'll do. And by the way, what's up with that profile picture, by the way? I'm not sure that YouTube will permit me to allow that on here. Yo, Ridge, is that you?
Yeah, man.
Yo, how's it going, my guy?
Oh, man, it's going pretty good, man. How about you?
Man, just surviving, just taking life one day at a time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you, bro.
But yeah, man, I don't know. Did you get to see any of the conversation I had with Enoch up here?
No, man. I actually just like literally 30 minutes ago or so, saw you were having it, and I clicked on it, and I could tell y'all were already into the discussion, so I figured I would just wait until he left to come back.
Yeah, that's cool, man. No worries. But yeah, one thing that we definitely got to do, man, we're not going to be able to do tonight because I have, I don't have 4 hours on here, but one night I want to
Yeah.
bring you back and we can do like a whole 2 hour discussion about like the last 10 years and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
that's happened and whatnot. But we got to set up a whole separate stream, for me and you to do that.
Yeah, man, the whole lore with that troll,
Right.
that's gonna be a whole crazy thing, man.
Yeah,
But
man.
just like for a second, I do just want to say, like, man, it's crazy how with the censorship and everything that we face, like, YouTube can just delete so much of our history, and it's like nobody knows the stuff that some of us have done and how much work we put into it, like literally I don't think maybe there's one or two videos still floating around from like some of your backup channels, but like you used to go out on the street every day, man, with your Bible and preach, and like YouTube just wiped all of that away, and nobody would know that you ever did that, outside of those who were there at the time.
Yeah, I hear you, man. The truth is a lot of us don't get the amount of, credit, and respect that we deserve. Like a great example for that would be this GMS narrator clown, right? Like I don't know if you saw the video I put up recently, but I saw the clip from his stream somebody sent me to, and it was like, oh, well, ETT, he don't have any fruits, he isn't teaching anybody, he ain't doing nothing. I think to myself, like, what the hell? They don't teach, don't have discussions, don't do nothing. Like, is this guy
Yeah,
like living under a rock or something? And then, by the way, I also started to teach when I was 14 years old. Like, what the hell were you out doing when you were
right.
14? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So,
man.
people like that really, piss me off. That talk shit about things that they, don't really have any knowledge of.
Yeah, man. Me and you have both been doing it from a very young age, and we both could have blew up if we would have like just jumped on the like Trump bandwagon and acted like, oh, Trump's fighting against the Illuminati, and just, went the popular route instead of the cold hard black pill truth route, that um we're all screwed and no politician is going to save us, because nobody wants to listen to reality. Everybody wants to believe that, you know, somebody's going to come save the day, right?
Right, right. Yeah, you're making a good statement, man. If me and you were to like get on YouTube, say 8 years ago, and just tell people comforting lies, hell, I bet we both have, like 50,000 subs by now if we got on here, told people lies, make people feel good. But the fact that we're
Yeah,
up here,
yeah,
speaking the truth, not caring about the subscribers or the views, you know, that's why we're getting, avoided by a lot of people, is because people don't like what we're up here talking about. If we were sitting here saying, some peachy clean, and whatnot, then people would be drawn to that message. But people don't really want to hear, the truth about what's really going on in the world.
yeah, man. And the way I look at it is like, I would rather, when everything is said and done, be remembered as like, a low key guy that spoke the truth than a mainstream sellout, because like in the end, that's what those people's legacy is going to be,
Yeah, yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Just going back to what we were saying, a lot of people don't know the nonsense we've had to deal with over the years, the
Yeah,
tribulations and the circumstances we've had to bend through. A lot of people, just like, say, for instance, like I saw on one stream, it was on, somebody said, well, look, you only have like 80 views on this video. You must not be, putting enough effort in. It's like, dummy, it's kind of hard to do that when you have the entire, YouTube headquarters
yeah,
deliberately
yeah.
censoring your content. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not as easy as you think.
Yeah, and the reality of it is, none of these alternative platforms are remotely close to YouTube in viewership. So everybody's just saying like, "Oh, move to this site or move to this site." Um, it's just not the same. Number one, and number two, like, I've never seen the point. Like, don't get me wrong, I do have a BitChute account and whatnot, and I do post here and there. But like, everybody on BitChute is already awake, right? Like, that's the whole reason they went to BitChute. So you're not really being a fisher of men, if you're uploading stuff on BitChute.
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, people ask me like all the time, like, "Oh, why don't you open a Rumble account or
Yeah, yeah,
BitChute or Odyssey?" And I say, "Well, you know what? Perhaps one day I might put a couple uploads, but really my focus point is on YouTube." Well, for one, because YouTube's been around my entire life, so this is really the only app I use to get videos and information. And as far as these other websites, as you said, a lot of the people on there, they went there to get, truth or information. Like, say, for instance, like with this whole Corolla, read
yeah,
between
yeah,
the lines. People go on there to get unrestricted information about it. Hell, I'm
yeah,
not going to lie. Even I go on there to get information about that type of stuff that YouTube doesn't allow. But the fact
yeah.
is, most people on there are already, awake and aware of what's going on. The real place you're going to find mindless idiots that are unaware is here on YouTube.
Yeah, man. The way I look at it is like, Rumble, BitChute, etc., are for truthers who want to learn more and who want to dive even deeper, right? Because there's always something for us to learn. Whereas YouTube is for the people who don't know anything. And when we post on YouTube, we're like being fisher of men, and hopefully we can actually reach somebody and wake them up.
Yeah, yeah. I got people like every once in a while message, "Hey, man, watch your videos. I thank you. I changed my beliefs after listening to a couple of your videos, or I finally
Yeah,
found out, I viewed something wrong and I learned from your content." So, hey, even if the content helps, 5 or 10 people here or there, it's worth doing. It's worth
yeah,
doing these content, even if it reaches only, 50, 80, 100 people, 300 people, a week. It's
yeah,
still
man.
it's worth it.
And you know, man, like something that really gets me is I've seen truther channels with, you know, from like 20,000 subscribers to hundreds of thousands of subscribers complaining about being shadow banned or not getting enough views or whatever. I'm just thinking, like, people like me and you have been doing this with hundreds of subscribers to, if we're lucky, 1,000 before a channel gets terminated. And we don't complain nearly as much as these people. Like, we would kill to be at their level, but they still find a reason to complain. It's just ridiculous, man.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And a whole nother thing, man. You know what I find weird? Like a lot of these people that have like these big subscriber accounts and whatnot, a lot of these guys are like sloppy with the
Thank
way they
you.
do videos and shit. Like they'll do a live stream like every couple months or upload a video like once 2 weeks for like 15 minutes. Like hell, if I had, 20,000 subscribers, 10,000 subscribers, hell, that's a even bigger motivator to upload like every 2 days or something. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, man. It's so bizarre. Some of these bigger channels have some of the worst quality content out there.
Yeah, I hear you. It's it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Um. But I think that, like, honestly, and I don't have an opinion on the flat Earth thing, and that's like the one subject I kind of stay away from because it's so divisive. But outside of that, like, just all the other stuff that he talks about, I think Eric Dubay is he's a quality content creator. He's got like a series. He talks about stuff like the Freemasons and like these little 20-minute documentaries that go over these things, and they're just great, man.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like there's even things I disagree with him on. Like say for instance about like the nuke hoax or dino hoax. I think he's totally wrong with those
Yeah,
things, but I'll give him credit. I've seen some of his videos about like Freemasonry or certain history with some events. And he actually does a lot of good research and provides information for a lot of these different subjects. So some of these guys, as I say, you got to take the good and leave the bad. Take everybody with a grain of salt.
yeah, man, and like you have to respect the fact that he's written, I believe, actually, like a handful of books, and they're
Yeah, I
really
believe he has
long,
like
man.
5 or 6 books, something like that, maybe 7.
Yeah, they're really long. It's like he's really into the game.
Correct.
Um, and the thing is, and I believe we've talked about this before, whenever it comes to the dinosaurs, is, like, my theory is, and I believe yours is as well, is that dinosaurs lived with humans at one point. And like when you find those stone carvings and stuff, it's like, man, I don't know how, you can deny that or explain that away. Like,
Right,
you know,
right, exactly. I'll give a funny example. Like even Eric Dubay, I have one of his books I was reading, and has a whole chapter dedicated to the dinosaur myth. So I was like,
yeah,
yeah, I disagree, but you know what? Out of curiosity for his position, I'll give the chapter a read because I'm going to read the whole book anyway. So I read it, and long story short, most of his information is, well, they made this up. It's like, well, what do you think with these bones? Or they just go somewhere, place these in the ground,
right.
and have people dig them up, or are these actual real creatures that lived relatively recently? Or about like the carvings you were talking about, like the artwork or pottery or stones carved into certain ways. He'll try to say, Will, like the guy that made the was it the Inca stones? Oh, well, he
Yeah,
said that he faked all of 50,000 of them with some type of like drill or something. And I would argue and say, well, hold up a second. I would argue that the government was forcing him to give a false admission because they don't want people to know they're actually real. Like, how is that like out of the realm of possibility that this guy's being forced to lie about how he found these and whatnot? To not get people to look deeper into it because they'll say, oh, well, he said that he faked them for fame. It's like, that's the end of the story. It's like, is that really true? Or is that just a cover up to hide, the lost history of man?
yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I'd argue.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and like, you know, this also goes into like the Nephilim giants, and that whole cover up, and the Smithsonian. I went down that rabbit hole. Apparently, they like destroyed and got rid of a lot of the giant skeletons and stuff. And one of the things that like these debunkers and stuff will do with that is they'll point out like they'll take some of these photos of these Nephilim giants and point out that like one of them is photoshopped, right? So that means the whole thing is fake, right? And that's just like a way to
Right, right.
discredit the whole theory. And like, yeah, there is a lot of fake pictures out there. Like I would say, the majority of like the thumbnails and stuff, are fake. But that doesn't
Right.
discredit the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Right, right. That's a great point that you bring up. Like, say for instance, with the dinosaurs, they'll say, "Well, when you go to the museum, the ones on display are not real. See, they're hiding them." It's like, well, there's a good reason why the ones that are on display that children could knock over and whatnot are not real. For one, these
Yeah.
bones are very fragile and very expensive. Like I seen recently, a few weeks ago, there was the world's um most expensive dinosaur fossil sold for $50 million. It was like a complete like T-Rex
Yeah.
structure or whatnot. $50 million for that. So obviously these things are very valuable and fragile, need to be under, lock and key protection and can sell, for a lot of money. So I'm saying, so obviously it makes sense for why these things are not just being, hung up from the ceiling where people can knock into and break and can't really be replaced easily.
Yeah, man. That's a great point. And like, there's only a few examples out there of things like the T-Rex. And the other thing is, and like I've watched a few of like Eric Dubé's videos talking about dinosaurs being a hoax, and like one of the things that he'll go to is like the word dinosaur was made in the 1800s and all of that, and that's when they started finding the fossils and whatnot. And it's like, well, those carvings that we were talking about go back thousands of years.
Right, exactly. And you know what I find funny with that? I seen the exact video you're talking about. And it's like, well, why is nobody mentioning here about the stone carvings, engravings, and temples and pottery around the world? Like, why is that being completely left out of these quote unquote debunking videos? It's like they're only deliberately using things that they think proves their point. But all these other things that refutes their statement about, like, as I just mentioned, all the examples, they won't have anything to say about it. All they can say is,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that's all not real. That's all fake." It's like, really? Well, what proof do you have of that? You never seen any of these things yourself. You're just sitting there in your living room on the computer. So, like, what the hell do you know?
Yeah, man. And, something else is like, the Bible talks about things like Behemoth and Leviathan. Like, that's not too far off from some of the dinosaurs that we hear about.
Hell, well, I would argue that the behemoth is actually the sauropod dinosaur. I mean, the only creature that fits the description of that would be that particular dinosaur. So I'd argue that's an example in the Bible of a dinosaur.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And as you said, right, they're trying to argue, oh, well, the dinosaur term was only invented in the 1840s. It's like, okay, sure, but that doesn't mean nobody's seen them beforehand. They just call them something different compared to
Yeah,
what you today call it.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, man, a lot of people are just, don't know what's going on. Like, I remember last time we brought you up here, there was a guy on here talking about, oh, well, the whole Antarctic, mission was all staged in like a sound studio or something. I was thinking to
Yeah,
myself, hey, look, even if you agree or disagree as to what the conclusion of the experiment is, I just find it laughable to pretend that it was like faked in some type of like, studio or something. I mean, it's so obvious that it wasn't. It just shows you the extent people go to make things up.
yeah, and that whole even like all the drama that got started from that. That's like why I just, stay away from that whole topic because, within the truther community, there's so many important things to focus on, and just this endless debate over the shape of the earth. I find it to just be something that just really distracts people, from all the other things we could be focusing on as, the truther movement.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. I hear what you're saying. It's just it's just really weird to me how certain people think like say for instance, like I went on to a stream with I believe this guy YouTube channel, the Silver Rain Soul Unchained Mind or something like that. He used to be big buddies with Jaronism for a year. But then when Jaron
Yeah.
went on that trip and changed his view, and now he's all a sellout, he's being paid, did he really go there? Dude literally called up the Antarctic base that they had to go to and asked if they really were there or not, or was it staged? It's just so bizarre. Some of these people think they like figured something out while they're sitting there, in their living room on a computer or shit. You know what I'm saying? It's just honestly laughable.
Yeah, man, and like the price of faking a whole Antarctica studio and all of that, for um and for just like what, how many people watch that? Like 1 million people at most. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
so irrational.
yeah. I know that. It's not cheap going down to Antarctica. So this guy, Will Duffy, he spent like about what $350,000-400,000 to take a team of people down there for a few days.
Yeah.
So that ain't cheap. Ain't at all cheap.
Yeah, man. And it's funny because like apparently there were some flat earth people that just straight up refused to go. And like, people were saying like, well, they know that they're going to be proven wrong and it's just a grift for them. And sadly, I think there is some people who are disingenuous, when it comes to the whole flat earth thing, who literally are just using it to get money.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to deny that. I would argue that the same way for like most subjects. Like, say for instance, a lot of these, people on YouTube teaching the Bible or claiming the Bible. A lot of these guys are just using that to get some type of like popularity off of it or make a name for themselves as some type of like
Oh
great
yeah.
teacher or whatnot. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. As I said, I'm a flat earther myself, but I think a lot of these guys get way out of hand and out of control with some of the theories and beliefs they come up. Oh, everybody is faking everything. Everybody is a shill that disagrees with you. You know what I'm saying? Like that dude I quoted earlier, the Unchained Soul guy. He was being like, oh well, this guy must be being paid by somebody to come up here and to
Yeah.
disagree. It's like really like could I not just have a different view from you? But like, what the hell is wrong with these people?
So since you're still a flat earther, did it just come down to like with the whole final experiment thing, like you just admitting that, hey, we got the model wrong, basically?
No, I actually don't. I've never claimed any model. I don't believe anybody can really map out all the continents where they are correctly. So I don't hold to any particular model they have out there. But based on all the evidence I've seen, I don't believe I live on a spinning globe. I think there's an abundance of evidence that exists that the world beneath our feet is not at all moving as the way science declares. The sun and the moon obviously are rotating over us, just as the Bible describes. So I
Yeah,
would
right,
argue there's
right.
a whole laundry list of reasons why I don't believe in the spinning ball.
Well, that's the thing. Like the final experiment didn't disprove the flat Earth theory, right? It just disproved a certain model of it. But a lot of people still didn't want to swallow their pride and admit that they got the model wrong, so they just went on saying, "Oh, the whole thing was a fake Illuminati psyop."
Right, right. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, man,
Um,
there's no shortage of just dumb theories people come up on the internet. Like, one I'll touch on, but I don't want the video flagged or whatever. But on September 11th, I'll leave it at that.
yeah,
Some people going around saying no airplanes were used. It's like, what the hell? So we went from like 10 years ago, people debating about where they're actually like passengers on these planes, or even people saying, well, maybe did they have some type of like, device in them or whatnot to create, even bigger bang, read between the lines. Or now people don't even believe they were real at all. Oh, all the footage that shows these coming in, all of that's like fake and edited. It's like, what the hell? Like you mean to tell me that how do you account for like the hundreds of civilians, if not thousands of civilians, who were around New York that day who happened to capture the event on their personal cameras they had with them? So like how is all those footage like magically not real? You know what I'm saying? Like some people just don't think. Like if you want to argue maybe there's no passengers on it, I mean that's a different debate you could have, but to pretend that they're not real at all, I mean that's just ridiculous to claim that. Go ahead.
what about the theory of the Savior being born on September 11th?
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that. I believe Jay actually believes that, right? Sacramento Truth Movement, he actually holds to that belief
Yeah,
that Christ was born that day.
yeah. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd say that it's false, right? I'd say, well, for one, the Bible doesn't tell us a particular month or day as to what Christ was born, but based on everything I've seen, it wasn't in September or December or November.
Yeah. Um, well, man, I'm getting sleepy, brother. I'll talk to you later, man. Take
All
care.
right, that's cool. Yo, contact me on Discord, man. Let's set up that stream discussion soon, all right?
All right, man. See you, buddy.
All right, cool. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. All right, that's cool. It's good to chat with Bridge every once in a while. He's a cool guy. We go back like 11 years or something like that. 10, 11 years. I've known him a long while. So I'm going to be wrapping this stream up in a moment here. Let me see real quick. Man, I got two of them Angry Orchards waiting for me when I'm finished with this. I put both of them in the fridge before I came to do this live stream. Say, hey, that was my motivator I was looking forward to. When I got done with this podcast. What 2.5 hours. Got them two beers waiting for me. So I'm gonna enjoy those. Yeah, I was on the Discord the other day, talking to shit, who was it in my server? I forget who the brother was, but you know who you are. We were talking about the beer prices and whatnot. Believe he lives in like Alaska or something. So there's only like regional like beers that are available, right? Like depending on like what coast, of the United States or what, state you're at, or really anywhere around the world, right? There's different, beers or wines available, all over the world. And honestly, not all of them look bad. Like I was watching some of these like travel vlog videos from like the Philippines or from, somewhere in Asia or even from India. They have like decent looking beer that's only like $1 for a bottle. Say, damn, only $1 for that? And doesn't seem bad at all. But you are taking a chance with any of those drinks you have in like specifically India or like Bangladesh, right? A lot of their water they have over there, is not not treated properly. So you always have to be careful with, drinking those type of waters because, a lot of these travelers go over there and they get an illness they call Deli Belly, right? Deli Belly. Look that up on YouTube, right? They have dinner at some of these like street side, restaurants or whatnot, and either the food was, unsanitarily prepared, or the water is, not filtered the right way, and they're it's not going to be good for them. So you got to avoid, a lot of these drinks in these areas. Now, as far as like the beer goes and wines, well, those should be usually okay because they're like actually manufactured at at these factories before they're sent out to whatever location has need of them, right? So typically with like sealed drinks and products like that, it's a lot more sanitary to buy those compared to buying a drink from some guy with a street card or something. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, y'all, I think that's gonna wrap up my stream tonight. Everybody have a good night. If anybody made it to the end of the live stream, put hashtag, let me bring it up real quick. There we go, hashtag day. If anybody made it to the end of the live stream, put hashtag day down below, and I'll see y'all on the next live one.